and will hear about things we have forgotten and things we have yet to learn. But what I have to tell you is right in front of your face. In fact, it is at the tip of your nose. Hello, my name is Amelia Black, and I'm here to talk to you about smell, both as the act of perceiving olfactory information and as the inherent odor of things, of design. Today my talk considers two main ideas. One, that the underlying experience of smell is a relatively untapped communicative tool in design. But secondly, this possibility is currently hindered by a severe lack of language with which to articulate the subtlety of smell experience. Today, you will breathe 23,040 times, inhaling over 440 cubic feet of air. Each breath brings in information that we feel before we think. The sense of smell is directly linked to our memories and emotions in terms of how it is processed by our brains. A primitive experience of being human that heightens our reality, informs desires, smell triggers recollection, and even constructs our perception of space. The human nose never stops smelling, even in sleep, and yet, as a culture, we have systematically lost our vocabulary to articulate smell. Since the rise of scientific understanding created the predominance of sight and sound with the Enlightenment, words like bright, once used to describe types of smell experiences, have long since gone through etymological transformations to be claimed by the world of the visual. Smell now relies upon a mishmash of informal terms borrowed from the other senses, a description that loses nuance, becoming either good or bad, dog shit or roses. That dichotomy leaves out the communication of smell memory and its associated emotions. Not being able to communicate the subtlety of smell denies a person access to their full felt experience. In the same way that not finding the words to communicate emotions can be hobbling to a person's ability to express themselves. Designers already design for a user built of bones and muscle, but the possibility of considering smell offers us the opportunity to design for the emotional psyche in a deeper and more meaningful way than is currently considered, a kind of smell ergonomics. We as a society have been taught to associate the experience of what it means to be clean with the scent of the laundry and the body care aisles, training us to cover and ultimately deodorize ourselves, our bodies, our objects, and our environments to the point that we as a culture are now smell blind. One of the smells that we now associate with hygienic cleanliness is the synthetic musk galaxolide, a top note in Procter & Gamble's Tide detergent fragrance. It was scientifically designed to be strong enough to cling to our garments even after they've been put through the wash cycle, to withstand the high heat of a dryer, and last for days inside your dresser drawer to still smell, quote, clean by the time they're finally worn. Galaxolide is an example of a current attempt to combine the consumer experience and smell. Using the emotional associations we connect to smell through memory in an attempt to affect our experience in the retail environment with the intent to make money. Perfume and fragrances is a $5 billion industry. One of the few voices talking about smell today is that of Chandler Burr. The expressive New York Times scent note columnist, he deals almost exclusively with the world of luxury perfume. He is incredibly adept at creating beautiful metaphors. Here are a couple descriptions from a recent article. A cloud of ambery vanillic light, diffusing in utter silence. Silk smooth, colorless luxury weighted with the beauty of iris root. They sound great, But even after a year of studying smell, I have absolutely no clue what they mean. So, in terms of relating to the smell experience of the nation's Tide consumers, it is my belief that the current scent criticism is both too little and too much. We need more design criticism. One alternative is the experimental preservationist and architect Jorge Otero Payos up at Columbia. His project for the Philip Johnson Glass House in New Canaan, Connecticut, re-examined the role of existing smells and odors in recollecting the past. In 2005, when the National Historic Trust took control of the home, they chose to deodorize the space as a part of the restoration process, effectively wiping away a layer of what it meant for its architect, Philip Johnson, and his partner, David Whitney, to live in the glass house. To Professor Otero Payos, that lived-in smell is an integral element to the visitor's house museum experience. Working with the Spanish perfumer Rosendo Mato, Professor Otero Payos set about creating 3 perfumes to recreate the felt experience of each decade of the house's inhabitants. The first fragrance consists of the scent of newness by analyzing the building's materials and what they would have smelled like fresh. The second decade is made up of the smells of 1950s gay male cologne. Since the couple frequently played host to New York's gay social elite, the likes of Andy Warhol. The last decade resolves itself as the result of 30 years of 2 heavy smokers living in a building without operating windows. It's the scent of stale cigarette smoke. Sadly, the Trust never implemented the perfumes for aesthetic reasons, citing the fact that they thought the scents combined to create a smell something akin to a, quote, trailer park. But nevertheless, this project is an excellent example of the depths to which smell can dimensionalize space, a kind of conceptual vocabulary for how in the future we can conceive of smell as an element of design. Another conceptual interpreter is Cecil Tolis, whose scientific and artistic practice aims to increase our fluency in smell information. From synthesizing the scent of fearful phobic men and turning it into a scratch and sniff gallery installation, to mapping urban spaces, such as Berlin and Mexico City, by the sense of the different socioeconomic communities who live there, and even creating a fictional language for smells based on real linguistic study. Her work seeks to cultivate a tolerance of the nose by giving the active smeller, and in many cases an art viewer, an experimental vocabulary through which to perceive the nuance of scent beyond just their knee-jerk good or bad response. George Orwell believed that the real secret to class distinction in the West was that, quote, the lower class smell. To me, Cecil Tolis' work questions on a fundamental level many of the social distinctions we make between people and societies based on information that we are currently ill-equipped to comprehend. Here's a summary of my key points today, but the thing I want you all to walk away with is number 6, that design smells. To ignore the messages within the smells of design is to abdicate our authority in creation and expression. I believe that as critics, practitioners, and users, we can and should re-empower the inherent capacity of smell to communicate the fullness of our everyday experience. Thank you.
Really interesting. And as it happens, I was reading about science, some studies of science, olfactory science recently. And to your point that, we don't have the language in sufficient robustness to describe smell, there is science, I don't know if you're aware of it, but that suggests that on a neurological, brain, cerebral level, that the olfactory sense and the language sense itself may have the same root, which suggests the high irony of, having no language.
Well, exactly. It was amazing to me in my research that before the Enlightenment, we had a very sophisticated vocabulary through using medicine to diagnose people through smell. And so it's sort of astonishing that within 300 years we could completely, essentially lose that.
Well, and in terms of talking about in history, when I was recently reading about 18th century London, so the most vivid descriptions are the various smells for which, as you say, they had, as many words as the Inuit have for snow. I mean, because it was such a smelly place. Is there a way, do you think, to reaccustom people and designers and architects and everybody else to thinking about the way things smell?
I think you were that question was planted because that was how I applied my thesis research. I developed a project called the Smell Glossary, which essentially is an online collaborative thesaurus to smell experience with an iPhone app. And essentially playing on the fact that a lot of iPhone development and Samsung development is currently all about looking at how we can put olfactory sensors in smart technology and crowdsourcing what they're calling national security, but looking at our body odors as a way of tracing terrorists and whatnot. But I think that this is a really great way to map smell experiences, to look at everyday ways that we interact with space and how much those magical moments are deeply connected to smells. I mean, just the example of what is peppery. Peppery is a construction site. It's also steak au poivre. It's also, something that is this dried up thing that in your grandmother's cupboard. I mean, it's this, the associations and the emotions that we associate to smells are vast. And beginning to document that, I think, is a way to get back at that language.
Well, it also, I was thinking that there's a distinct olfactory component to issues of sustainability. The things, especially when I was a child, and as an adult as well, but a certain kind of new thing smell is the smell of petroleum and its derivatives, And as we think, as we are inclined to do these days about sustainability, it seems to me that becomes part of that discourse as well.
It's fascinating. I was just involved writing about a project called the Accidental Perfumers, which was this Headspace symposium. And Majora Carter had a project where she was looking at how do we, create comfortable, nice spaces for people who live in the slums or in the Bronx, where, the Bruckner Boulevard pumps tons of toxins into people's environments, and that is affecting how they feel about space. But then also to the point of the new car smell, it's a carcinogenic smell. But they've started to synthesize the new car smell, and embed it in the leather, the fake leather in your cars.
I was wondering why my Ford Fusion, which is almost a year old, still smells new, and now you've answered my question.
There you go.
Amelia, thank you very much.
Thank you.